listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and my guest for today is Charles Whitwam. He's the founder of Howl for Wildlife, an amazing organization that's getting in front of legislative issues regarding wildlife, habitats, conservation, and much more. I really enjoyed my conversation with Charles today. We recorded virtually, and the connection was a little spotty at times, but I encourage you to listen to this in its entirety. If you spend any time in the outdoors, you to check out Howl for Wildlife. Charles, thanks for joining me. I was in your neck of the woods last week, and we weren't able to connect then. So we're doing this virtually. I'm now on the East Coast, hanging out in Boston for a few days. Glad that we could carve out some time to get together, man.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't know you were in, well, we had just met for the first time, so I didn't know where you were anyway. But when I talked to you, I think you said you were in San Francisco, right? So.
Yeah, no, I had no idea that you lived in Northern California, or I didn't really even know much about you. And you're somebody that's been on my list that I've wanted to get on the podcast because I think what you do and what we're doing aligns very well. And I want to congratulate you and also thank you right out of the gate for what you got going on with, Howl for Wildlife. And I guess with that, let's dive right into it. I mean, it's kind of a new advocate spot for hunters' voices, outdoorsmen's voices. You don't have to be a hunter to go there and get some education. And I think it's incredible. And I wanted to talk to you firsthand about that. So that's why I invited you on. I'm super fortunate that I have some friends, that are in the hunting space and write for some certain publications. One of those being Free Range America. It's a Black Rifle publication. And, I reached out to Mike Hearn about the whole mountain lion predatory cats bill that they were trying to pass in the state of Colorado, or at least get rolling. And where I got most of my education about it and everything was at Howl for Wildlife. So that's shout out to Mike Hearn for first turning me on to you and your platform. And I was just shocked and amazed at how easy it was to find the information, how easy it was for me to voice my opinion and contact the right people to do that. So I want to commend you on that, and I want to learn about it.
That's great to hear, because that's what we want to accomplish is, you went there and it was easy for you to use. That's bottom line. That's what I want to hear. Coming from an end user, I guess. Right. So that's great that it makes sense to you. Yeah. Free Range American has been wonderful. I had never contacted them before. And I think it was through a contact that I knew that has something to do with Black Rifle, got me in contact with those guys, and Michael Shea and Matt White, and I haven't met Mike Hearn, but I know who he is. But those guys have been writing some incredible articles and really supporting what we're doing. I'm really looking forward to working with them more, and we are. So I actually just got to meet Michael in Texas last week. So
perfect. What were you doing down there?
The veteran adaptive athlete shoot at the Black Rifle Ranch. That was just an amazing experience to be around those people and help out where I could. And we were just shooting bows and having fun and hanging out with some really amazing people.
What a super cool event. I mean, I've never been to the adaptive shoot. I've been to some TAC events, and I think that that's one of the coolest things that the Black Rifle puts on is that adaptive shoot. I mean, I work with some similar nonprofits that get veterans out, and they get them out in the outdoors, whether it's fly fishing or shooting bows at Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear, or one of those, higher end shops where you can get some good lessons and actually taking people with disabilities and not putting a limit on them, and we've had a couple of those guys on, like Caleb Brewer, I think he's a common friend of ours, and we've also had Mike on the podcast. But what just a great organization, group of guys that are truly helping.
Yeah, they really were. It was a humbling experience just to see, some of these guys in the condition that they're in, missing limbs and bodies burnt. I mean, you name it. And they're out there having fun. And, personally, you're just looking at them and you're like, dang, like this has got to be tough because you can't walk around anymore, and I can. And you're out here wanting to shoot a bow and all that, and you're having a good time. It's just, when you're around people like that, and you're like, you're appreciative of what you have.
Yeah, no, all those times when, I've complained about my feet hurting from, packing elk out or doing whatever. It's like none of that shit matters, dude. After you see, just the drive that some of these guys have and how genuine of a good time that they're actually having,
Yeah, and after the shoot, man, it was, I don't know, it was probably 4 hours. They had a whole range set up. So you're on the Black Rifle Ranch. It's outside of San Antonio. And you're on these teams. And everybody's just going around to each target. And it's all at varying ranges. And some guys are shooting with a mouth tab because they don't, have an arm or have lost use of one arm. So, they're pulling their bow back and the string has a tab on it, so they're doing that. And this is most of these guys, it's their first time. They just started shooting a bow like a couple days before or whatnot, you know what I mean? And so they're just super excited about it. And it was like probably about 4 hours to get through it. I was on for the most part I was on Matt Best's team, which was great because he's super cool. So much fun.
He's Matt.
He's Matt. Yeah, exactly. Super generous guy. You could just tell. Really, really nice guy. And being around those dudes and just all the back and forth and everybody else who was on the team, just what a good time. And I talked to a lot of the guys afterwards, and they would certainly be interested in hunting.
Yeah, it's so great. And I've said this multiple times on the podcast, it's such a, whether you're successful at hunting or not, just the time that you spend out there, the decompression from getting away from some technology a little bit, right? Depending on where you're at. And just the practice that goes into shooting a bow, I think it's very, if you've never done it, I urge anybody to at least try it because it's almost a form of meditation for me, or a martial art, or there's some sort of connection there with a human that if you don't get that, then just put it down, like you should feel it almost right away.
It's certainly a primal weapon, even though, for the most part, the compound bows are definitely, that's a kind of a new thing, and the technology just keeps getting better, but still it certainly takes discipline. It's a perishable sport, and just being able to see your arrow in flight and hit the target and get better and better at that, that's super rewarding. And then to take that into the hunting arena is a whole nother thing, that you gotta, it's certainly more than shooting. But and it's something I love. I've been shooting a bow for as long as I can remember, honestly. My dad was super into it, so it was probably one of my first Christmas presents was a bow, and we lived on property where I could go shoot every single day. We had all kinds of targets and tree stands and everything. It was a property I lived on, so bow hunting's been a big part of my life for sure.
It has been for mine too. I grew up in a family of bow hunters, whether they were traditional or shot compounds, and I was fortunate enough as a kid that that was one of my first gifts was that, and then I think a .22 rifle shortly after that, and I always just stuck with the bow, and just that time of year is epic in Colorado. It sounds like Jurassic Park when those elk start bugling, and it's pretty epic. But it's cool because we grew up with a very similar background. I grew up on property as well, and we had free range to just go outside and play. and we were taught to be responsible with the weapons that we were given, and if you weren't, you were in deep shit, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's a different way to grow up. And I mean, I was like young, like 6-7 years old, you know,
and you grew up in Colorado.
I live in Evergreen now.
Awesome.
And I grew up there, and you know, there's so much national forest and public land around us. And that was honestly kind of the catalyst for me starting this podcast. Is there's such an influx in people, and people have heard me say this time and time again on this podcast, but I feel like they don't necessarily have those grassroots or education of growing up around wildlife or in the mountains, and they've recently moved into there. There's so many more people, and I think it just needs to be awareness needs to be raised on how to treat those spaces right, and take care of them and be good stewards of the land and all that stuff, because I'm worried that, you know, my kids won't be able to experience that, or their grandkids, or however long that takes to just totally deplete something or really screw it up. So, you know, I'm trying to do my part, but have a good time. I get to talk to cool people like you. I mean, that's the best part of this podcasting world, you know? And I didn't mean to go off on a tangent on archery or anything. I mean, I talk about it all the time, but it is something that I'm super passionate about, and it's cool that we share that connection.
Yeah.
But let's dive into Howl for Wildlife. You know what? I guess let's explain to the listeners that maybe don't know you guys, because you're a really recent organization that's popped up. And like, how long ago did it start? It was about a year ago, or is it?
No. Well, yeah, no. I made it public. You know, I launched it January 11th of this year. So
Man, that's awesome.
5 months ago. A little less than 5 months ago, I guess. I've been working on it since the idea. I started working on the idea last January of a year ago. You know, a year and 5 months ago, and been working on it ever since. Just trying to figure out what it is, how to build it, and what technology is out there to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And it's not too complicated, but I just had to get the right parts to work with all the other parts, because there was nothing out there that I could go buy that was just gonna do everything that I wanted to do. So, you know, first and foremost, it's always going to be an action-oriented platform. So when you go to the website, you're basically just going to see, for the majority, you're going to see actions. So different issues that are going on around the United States in multiple states. So by issues, I mean, you know, there's a bill or a petition or an initiative to take away hunting privileges for some reason. And this could be trapping, this can be predator hunting, it can be you know, public access to areas. But then on the flip side, it can also be pro-hunting issues. So it can be, you know, no net loss of hunting lands. You know, there's a bill out there where, you know, Georgia wants to, you know, write a bill for the next 20 years, there'll be no net loss of hunting lands, which means whatever hunting land is there now that they have set aside, that stays in place, which is a great thing for hunters.
That is a great thing.
And a great thing for future hunters as well, because they're going to have that place to go and hunt and fish. So it's issues that that have to do with both sides of that coin, and all hunting. You know, I'm staying away from, just because it's just not our mission, and it's really easy to get spread too thin, but staying away from any other issues, Second Amendment issues and all that. Sometimes it might tie in if it's right, but there's plenty of other advocacy groups out there for the Second Amendment. If they want our platform, I can build that for them and license that if they really needed that. But what it is when you see those bills, the difficulty has been, if you see an issue, the difficulty in the past has been, all right, well, what do I do? And some are better than others. You know, some will just have a list of the decision makers, a list of the people who are going to decide on this bill, and that can change too, because bills get passed along So that can go from committee to committee to committee. It's not always the same people. So you have to stay on top of that. So for you to get involved, if you just simply want to write an email to those decision makers, you have to find who those decision makers are. There could be multiple decision makers. There's been bills where there's 80, I think the highest we've had this year is 82 decision makers.
Wow.
So 82 different people, right? My point there is, I know most people just don't take the time to do that, right?
Especially outdoors.
Right. So what I wanted to do was create something where when you click that button to get involved, you are reaching all of the decision makers that are involved with that specific bill. And it's coming from you. It's coming from your email address, you know, Bobby Marshall at gmail.com or whatever. You know what I mean? We're not involved in that. It's your communication between you and them. And if there is 82 decision makers, you've sent 82 separate emails, right? So not just one, they're all hearing about it. It's not just going to like the chairman of the board or their staff or whatever. I wanted to be a pain in the ass and be like, no, we're going to get you involved with all of them, right? And then comes the form letter thing. So I didn't want to have a cookie cutter form letter because those are easily filtered. You know, technically your emails, your correspondence is supposed to be read and acknowledged, technically, by law. I know that they get filtered, they get put to one place or whatever, so I came up with an idea to do a way better job to get around that, so it's way more personal for you. I mean, A, you can edit your email. You can, we've accomplished, hey, if you just want to reach these people, push this button, write your own email, boom, you've reached all those people right now. Now, if you don't know what to write, we have a library of, you don't know this unless you like came back to the website a bunch of times, and depending on your cookie settings, you might not see the different emails, but we have a library of emails surrounding whatever subject that is that are pre-drafted and written for you. So you can change that, you can add it, you can erase the whole thing and write your own. So we've done that as well. Same thing with subject lines. If it's an issue where, with some issues, they want the same subject line so they can filter it because they need to know, like, all right, this is for this subject, and they'll specifically state that. But for other issues, it's just, here's a bill, and we need to make it as personal as possible, which it is, but I'm not going to make the subject lines all the same, so all that's different as well. You might not know that, but that's how we've set it up to be more effective in what we were trying to do. And the way I look at it is from the people who are receiving the emails. I look at it from their angle. So if I'm one of them and I see all these emails and they're different emails and they're different subject lines and they're not coming from an organization, they're coming from just, you know, Joe Smith and Mary Lou whatever, and they're like, wow, this is really coming from a bunch of people. This isn't just some organization that's sending the same thing over and over and over. So we've just made it easy for you to contact the right people. And that's had in this, not at this volume at all. And so, you know, obviously I'm tracking analytics and all that. We're over 700,000 individual emails sent since January.
That's so great. And I can tell you firsthand, I mean, it was super simple. Like, I didn't have to go and sign up or log in. I encourage people to do that with you guys if they're inspired to after our conversation. But simply, I wanted to go on. I wanted to do what I could do to voice my opinion about the predatory cats bill that was just, you know, up for proposal in the state of Colorado. And I think I had to go in and I think I put my name in, and I think I put an email address, and that was it. And then it was boom. Yep. I had access to phone numbers, emails, you know, how many people I wanted to contact, who I didn't want to contact. You know, there was multiple ways to get involved, if, you know, and I just thought it was so simple and easy to use that I don't know. you got the perfect platform for somebody to voice their opinion and do the right thing, without doing a ton of homework. I mean, you should know about something before you start clicking and sending something, but it's confusing. There's so many loopholes, like you said. Maybe there has to be the right subject line, or you don't know who to contact. I mean, that takes an expansive amount of time, firsthand, because you're doing it on the back end, or your team is. And, I think one thing too, that when these hunting bills come up, they don't take into consideration, for example, the state of Colorado, because we have so many over-the-counter big game tags, and it's not regulated with a draw yet. A lot of our revenue comes from out-of-state hunters, and they don't really have a way to voice their opinion at the ballot box, which I think is BS. And this is really the only way that you can do that, is by sending an email and say, hey, I live in the state of California or whatever, but I come to Colorado every year and spend X amount of dollars or whatever, or this is a family tradition, or whatever you want to put in that email. But it's a way for hunters that maybe frequent Colorado on a regular basis, or any state that's having an issue, to voice their opinion.
There's a tremendous amount of revenue involved there that comes from out of state. I know some states,
it's so much.
Some states make more money from out-of-state hunters than in-state hunters. So that is an important voice that they need to be aware of. And it's set up so the decision makers don't know what state you live in. You can write that in there, and I always say, if you do live in the state, make sure you put that in there. But you don't have to. It's just, I usually started off with something like that as, I'm a concerned conservationist, or I'm a citizen and a hunter, I'm a citizen of the United States or whatever. So, but yeah, so it's definitely set up to where anybody in any state can take action. There's multiple reasons for that. So you hit one of them with out-of-state hunting. That's why I got involved in Canada also. A ton of people go to Canada to hunt moose and caribou and everything else, so we got involved in British Columbia, because that's a lot of dollars. Not just for the province there, but for local businesses. Tourism, if you want to call it that,
outfitters.
Right? Yeah, outfitters, hotels, restaurants, all of that. You have those people coming in. The hunting industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, so this has wild effects, either positively or negatively. A lot of these bills, they have giant effects on economies and lifestyles. And then, of course, fish and game commissions. I mean, you get rid of hunting, or you lessen hunting, they're going to have less money to pay themselves also. They'll have less money for management, for their own salaries, everything. It's all there's a value put on all this,
Even for public land space, whether you're using that for camping or hiking or whatever. I mean, Colorado had a campaign a few years back that was Hug a Hunter or Hug a Fisherman. It's because it pays for like 85% of the state's, parks and upkeep in those bridges that cross rivers on some of those trails and stuff like that. So
I love that Hug a Hunter.
Pretty important.
Those little videos that they had. I just discovered that this year. Those are great, actually. And they're really well done. I mean, they, sort of cheesy, but it's whatever. They're well done, and they get the point across. And I think that sparks a conversation. I mean, that's something you want to get out to the non-hunting public, and because a lot of people don't know that where dollars come from for wildlife management. So you don't have to be a hunter to understand that. But how many people understand that? So if we can get them to understand that, what will then be their thoughts on hunting? Not that they have to become a hunter, but wow, interesting. And then furthermore, we break down what the Humane Society of the United States definition of trophy hunting is. That they set up their pole. They take these poles, how poles are, which are just, you can set them up however you want. It's ridiculous, honestly. But they'll set up a poll and ask a question about trophy hunting where I'd probably answer it the way they want me to answer it because it's the way they're asking it,
Right.
So we need to start changing minds through education and through outreach, which is something we just don't do. We talk to the choir all the time, and that's it. And we're like, yeah, we all understand, we all get it, we all, great, but what are we doing? We're the minority here. We have to understand that. And
I think that hunting, it's a very hard thing to understand unless you've experienced it firsthand. I mean,
it is.
For me as a kid, now that I look back on it, I mean, it was fun when I was a kid, but the first big game animal I killed, I was in shock, because there's a big process of breaking that down and what you go through, the emotional roller coaster, and I think I bawled my eyes out but was happy at the same time. And it really, for me, looking back on it, it puts a value on a life. So it made me understand what an actual living, breathing thing, the value on it. And then we were doing it because it was a form of food, and I still do it to this day because it's where I want my meat to come from. But I think there's no better lesson from that standpoint of really like, hey man, this is serious. This is serious shit, walking around, living and breathing and stuff, and being able to be, at the top of the food chain. We should be grateful,
Yeah. And it's important to understand that their life is it's surrounded by being hunted, not just by us. There's all kinds of things that are trying to kill them, and depending on what you believe, but what I'm saying is, like, if you believe in the God of the Bible or whatnot, or if you believe in strictly evolution or something, you're either an animal, which if you came from an animal, then well, why can't we hunt? I mean, what's the difference then between me and another than a mountain lion or whatnot? I'm just a predator
Sure.
with forward-facing eyes, and you know what I mean. So it's kind of an intellectual fallacy when I hear humans shouldn't hunt or something, and like, why are you going out to hunt these animals? It's like, well, wait a second, aren't we a part of this earth? Like, we didn't come from a different planet or something. This is a part of who we are. So explain to me the change. If I developed from an animal, when am I not allowed to hunt? And how come wolves, you have no problem with wolves hunting at all, but if I have dogs that are trained to actually be more disciplined, you have a problem with them hunting. But isn't that in their instincts? I mean, what is it where it's just that we have this weird way of humanizing everything, but then taking humanity and putting it someplace that's actually outside of reality.
Yeah, and I think part of that is you got to look at the timeline, right? Because for hundreds of thousands of years, we've been doing this, and for the last 150, maybe it started to not be acceptable in some people's eyes.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I think that it's something that's been happening for a lot longer, and that we should pay some sort of homage to a little bit more than criticize, because it's a form of existence.
It's a strange attack because
yeah,
still by far the majority of people eat meat. So we're killing animals either way, but if I want to kill an animal in its natural environment that it's used to, that it is born into being protective of itself, it's a part of its instincts, there's now something wrong with me doing that. But if I put, and we got to think about who's behind this or whatever, they're strategic as well. What are you going to do? I mean, there's obviously some farming, of animals and whatnot, or their treatment of animals, of beef and things like that get attacked, and sometimes, rightly so. But it'd be a pretty stupid strategy to just be a giant group that is going after, the slaughter of any beef whatsoever, because, well, you're kind of going against the majority there. You're taking that swing vote and putting them into, most people want to eat a steak or whatnot and everything. So they kind of compartmentalize it, redefine trophy hunting, say we don't eat meat for the edible animals that, that we do eat the meat from, you name it, create social science, say that, bears can't survive because of climate change and because of wildfires, and their numbers are dwindling and all that. And then, I mean, that just happened in California, and the biologists and department here just completely slammed the Humane Society of the United States on their false science that they drew up in their petition to the commission to basically end bear hunting. And the management plan in California and the studies that, unbeknownst to them, this is funny, nobody really knew they had these studies going on, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to release these studies now, and it's like bear numbers are more than they ever have been.
Exactly. I mean, that's the same thing in Colorado right now. They outlawed spring bear hunting, and now Division of Wildlife will give you an add-on bear tag in any game unit. You don't have to draw. I mean, they're practically giving them away because it's a problem.
Yeah. So we got to fight this science battle, I think, is what I was just saying, but we also need to fight the perception battle, and not to necessarily convince people to become hunters. I mean, if they want to, that's fine, but show them why the role of hunting is so important, and the many reasons why it is. Those can be personal reasons, and those can be obviously to support wildlife management, the money that comes from that, and all of that. But the food that it provides, the adventure that it provides, they're always going to take the worst things that they can find, the worst pictures or videos or whatever, and just paint all hunters as that. But again, like sort of what you're saying, it is hard to understand if you haven't been there, because, I mean, if you're not there for the, personally, and I don't care what anybody says, personally, I like to call it, when people, have the debate about, like, you killed an animal or you harvested the animal or whatever. Like, whatever. Listen, I know I'm killing it, but I'm doing more than that. Like, I can go kill an animal and leave it so that I killed it. I killed it. If I harvest it, by definition, I killed it, and then I took the animal, right? So that's a part of it. But, and all hunts are different. Some of them are just backyard hunts, or some of them are you show up to your hunting spot and, oh wow, there's a big buck that went fast. But some of them are, 2-week plus adventures where you lost 13 pounds and you went up and down the mountain. I mean, it's just the hardest thing you've ever done, and so you might break a leg or something, like it can be crazy where you hunt. So the spectrum of the adventures that you can get into with hunting, and that could be any kind of hunting, really, I think that's a great message that that we can show, and everybody's different too, so people are going to latch on to different messages, but we have to start doing it.
Yeah, and I think another point here too is you don't have to be a hunter to advocate for the best interest of wildlife, right? And I think that this is something that we've commonly lost, and why I'm so excited it is what you're doing as well, because there is an education process to this. Like, I don't think that we should just go to the ballot box and basically introduce a species that has never been in a certain area, and I'm talking about wolves specifically in the state of Colorado, just because we think that they're a cool animal, or it's a more ethical way to manage elk populations, or this animal was once there. it's a very fragile situation, and we pay hundreds, if not thousands, of biologists in the state of Colorado to study things like this that are actually wildlife biologists. And unfortunately, they didn't have a voice in some of that. I mean, a lot of them were put, on a gag order or something like that, to where they couldn't talk about it if they worked for a government agency. So I think that truly you need to listen to experts, then form your opinion, and then vote if it is something like that, the ballot box. Because the ballot box biology, I mean, I get public and civil issues and, humanity issues, whether it's healthcare or Medicare or whatever you want to, whatever's brought up, school systems, everything that you do at the local level. But what I don't understand is voting on something that has a scientific background to it with proven facts and experts that are constantly tracking it.
We don't ask the public to vote on, medical surgical procedures.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
Because there's professionals who get that, and who would we be to be like, oh yeah, this is what I think, and then it's up to persuasion. Like, let me read this column and read this column. Of course, they're both conditioned on something so important based on that. And yes, with wildlife issues, there are paid professionals in every single state who study the animals in their state, which is vastly different from another state. There's different habitats. There's different pressure. There's different predator management. You name it. So why do we even have those people then, if we can just take these issues to the ballot box? However, the ballot box is a reality, and I really think we need to. No, I know we need to tackle that issue and say, okay, well, let's make it so we can handle the ballot box as well. How do we do that? So then, if we can accomplish that, which I honestly I think we can, then they become irrelevant. The Humane Society of the United States becomes irrelevant. They really do. If they can't win there, where are they going to win? They can't win by science. They never have.
Yeah.
So, and I always hear, oh, well, they have a lot of money and a lot of people and all that. Well, so do we. You know how much money is spent in this industry? It's insane. So that's not an excuse. It's just it's got to be used in the right way, and there needs to be a well packaged message, marketing, outreach plan that is the vehicle for this. And I know there's smart enough people out there who can do this. And the great part about it is that we can start with science and data on our side. We don't have to make stuff up, and it can be proven by professionals.
Yeah, just look at the fact.
So that's really the direction that we need to head. And back to kind of like crossing state lines, because there's hunters that hunt out of state. It's also about, I think, the reason why I want it set up, the reason why it is set up that you can take action in any state, is we really need to unify. So it doesn't matter if you're an elk hunter or a turkey hunter or whatever kind of a species specific hunter you are, if you're not like a multi-species hunter or whatever. When you see an issue in Virginia that's a trapping issue or whatnot, we need the entire hunting community to get behind that, because you got to take the 5,000 foot view of what's really happening here. The low hanging fruit is what the anti-hunting orgs are going to go after first. So if they can get trapping out of the way, if they can get predator hunting out of the way, there's a lot of things that are going to happen if they do get that out of the way. So if we can keep the battles there, they're going to spend more resources and more money on that. And then if they start seeing that, man, we can't even win this, it's going to make it's going to make everything a lot harder for them. But then also, we're accomplishing as a hunting community, everybody actually having each other's backs. And when you see a duck hunting issue, but you've never hunted a duck before, but you're behind it, that's everybody coming together and supporting the entire sporting community, if you will, right? But we have to understand also that, you know, the anti-hunting communities, they know they can't get this done in all 50 states. They pick specific states. They basically are like, where do we have a chance? You know, where do we have a chance? And are
Right.
there senators there or congressmen or whoever that will get that we can convince to get behind this bill to sponsor this? You know, where can we win? So we win in Washington State, we win in Oregon, we win in California. If we get those out of the way, all right, well, Arizona's next because, you know, Arizona's starting to change a little bit. So they're going to go there. And then they're going to go to Colorado, which they already are. You know what I mean? So, and then the next thing you know, right, there we have, you know, less predator management or zero predator management if it was up to them in all of these states. So now they don't have to spend any resources, and all of their people can start working on whatever the next state is. And they can just keep building that and keep building that. And it might take some time or it might not, but they got all the time in the world. This stuff's been happening for decades and decades and decades, you know, with regards to, say, the Humane Society of the United States. So we need to just, we have to look at it like that. Like, what's the game plan here? What's the strategy? That's also why you need to be involved in every state, because so you understand that, you know, that's why it's
Yeah.
kind of, we're accomplishing a lot of things by having each other's backs, not just for each other, but we're fighting different battles by doing that, actually. So, you know, the other thing you brought it up is a little bit. We have the call thing set up as well, where basically it connects you with all the right people and gives you those talking points. And it's, you don't even have to make the call. You actually push the button. You have to put your phone number in, and a number from whatever state that issue is being presented. A number from that state will call you and pipe you into all those people with an in-state number. So there's some strategy to that, but we're giving you something to say, and making a call is, and actually talking to somebody is definitely way more powerful than an email, you know, if you can do that. And the other thing currently is we get people involved in commission meetings, so which has been really powerful here. Commission meetings, or, you know, a hearing where there's public testimony. We had some part to do with that in Colorado. I came out there for that bill, getting people involved in the process. So if there is a meeting going on, if there's public testimony needed, if people need to show up to a you know, Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting or something. And the reason why I say this is, in the past I've always heard hunters don't show up. The anti-hunting orgs, they show up. They have their people there. They make the calls. They make the emails and all that. So this is just doing what they do, and I'm like, well, okay, if they can do it, how come hunters can't do it? So
Yeah.
let's set something up that's more effective than what they have, and
They
let's
have
get
more
people
time because they're not having any fun. You know.
right. Yeah. So, um, so that's what we've done, and we're drawing resources from, you know, wildlife biologists and people who understand the legislative process and all of that to. So basically, you know, if we ask you, if we say, hey, there's this meeting coming up, and we would like you to give public testimony, you don't have to be, you're not intimidated by that, because there's going to be a bunch of other people around you, and you're gonna know exactly how the process works, and by that time, you're going to have what you're going to say totally written down, and you're in it with everybody else who's doing it for the first time, right?
Right.
So as we keep doing this, you just get more and more comfortable, and you get more you get more, you're emotionally involved,
Sure. And you
with
have
that
a
process.
community to lean on a little bit too, I would imagine, like I wouldn't know what to do or
Yep.
even where to go, so like yeah,
Yep.
I
No.
think it's a great way for people to connect to that share a common goal or value for sure.
So what ends up happening? We've had I over I don't know somewhere around 700 different hunters now involved in commission meetings, which is huge because it's never happened before. So all of a sudden you have, and we're by far outnumbering the anti-hunters at these meetings,
That's
which is
great.
great, right? What happens with the the norm, sort of the national hunting orgs that already exist is, when they come up with an issue or they have something they're working on, we can provide them with more ammunition, with more people. Because generally, they just kind of go and speak on behalf of all of their members. And to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa, what about why don't we just have all the members also be there? Like, let's get them involved. That's seems like a
That's
double
part of the game, right?
positive right
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So,
That's perfect.
so that's what, so that's what we're doing. And we certainly, don't, we're not trying to be like an insulated organization. Like we can do this and it's just us. This is, we're trying to work with everybody that we can for sure, just to get you, the hunter, involved.
That's pretty uncommon, man. So I commend you guys on doing it and doing it the way that you are and involving the individual. How did this all start? I mean, what was the catalyst? What gave you this idea? I mean, obviously there's a big gap there that needed to be filled, but what made you just put your foot down and head forward and just go for it?
Um, the Well, where I saw the gaps, where I knew there was a problem, it was the bear ban that was proposed in January of 2021. So a little over about a year and a half ago or whatever it is. Um, I was involved with that, with getting people to basically sign their disapproval, send emails and make calls. And that was really successful. It was kind of a wave of support, um, to pull the bill, and the bill got pulled super fast.
And
So,
was this for the state of
and that
California?
had
Sorry to interrupt you.
that was yeah, that was California, and the one of our lobbyists, one of our hunting lobbyists here in California he said, man, I've never seen anything like this before. Like the bill it didn't even go anywhere, and the author of the bill pulled it, and like it never went to committee, it never went to anything, and it, the national orgs didn't even have time to respond to this. It just happened so fast, but there was this grassroots push. So for me, I'm like, oh, okay, so hunters just haven't been involved before. That right? So so what do we do to get hunters involved? And
Right.
I also figured out, through that process, like, about decision makers, and that each bill has a certain set of people that are looking at it, and that changes, as it progresses. So I just sort of I learned about the process, and I realized nobody had anything out there to get you connected with the right people. So it was just based on, the success that we had, and the the way that we had that success, the method that we used for that success, and just learning about the process that made me want to, get some software and a program that could accomplish this on a larger scale, and make it easy for everybody in every state. Um, and then, as far as getting like the industry involved, on top of all that, on top of, all the advocacy stuff that we've made easy, we've gamified the website. So when you do log in, when you do create an account, which is just an email and a password, as long as you're logged in on the site, everything you do there, like, sharing links or taking action or getting involved in commission meetings, there's a point value assigned to all that. So you get points like in your account. And when those points reach a certain threshold, you're automatically entered into contests to win rewards. So so instead of like one thing that kind of, I don't know, I guess I want to say it bothered me, and I don't know if it bothered me. I was just like, well, I think there's a better way to do this. I see contests all the time on social media, like, like this
Sure.
page and share it 20 times and tag
Giveaways
14
and
people
yeah.
and you'll win, and you'll win something, right? All right, I get that. But what do we need to do to get people involved in keeping hunting around? Because that doesn't keep hunting around. Not that it's supposed to, not that that's their mission, but I'm looking at it like, how do we get everybody involved? So let's incentivize this. The the rewards and incentives have been pretty amazing so far. We've had some hunts and some, you know, $800 backpacks and stuff like that, and people just get an email one day like, "Hey, you've done this, and."
I was checking out your guys' Instagram page today, and it is amazing what you got, what all you guys gave away. I had no idea that the incentives pack. I need to be more involved firsthand, so you can hold me accountable now. But but yeah, no, it's
Right?
really cool, man. I was just looking at your story because I knew that we were going to talk today, and I had no idea. I get caught up, man. I'm really bad at social media, and I have a hard time paying attention to a lot of the people that I follow unless, it's right there in front of my face. And I'm not the guy to spend hours on it scrolling. But I went to your page specifically today, started watching the stories, and it was about 15 or 20 stories of you guys just giving away stuff.
And it wasn't even us. I mean, that's just our partners that are like, yeah, you know, we'll offer this, which is what it's all about, and because we want to
Yep.
support, we want hunters to know, who in the industry is kind of stepping up to the plate, and
Oh, that's
we're
another
not like
great point.
charging them or anything like that to do that,
Yeah.
so it's kind of a, man, I mean, it just works both ways.
Yeah,
First
no,
light
it's
hunting
a great concept.
has been has been like really big and sharing our posts and our stories and getting involved and writing up their own posts and all that. And I never talked to them. I never talked to First Light or anything. They were just like, "This is great what you're doing, and we're just going to start sharing the crap out of that to our hundreds of thousands of." And that's what's important is like we have to get the message out. I mean, we just started. Nobody knows who I am. I'm relying on the industry to see the important. Yeah, it's growing for sure. I've met some pretty incredible people in the last few months, but that's the whole thing is we all have to spread this message and get as many people as involved as possible. The same thing with like Kafaru. Aaron Snyder's been awesome. I've never met him, but he's like,
Yeah,
I
it's a
get what
great
you're doing.
company.
What do you need?
Aaron lives
Yeah.
a few miles from me, and
Oh,
we
right.
have
Aren't
some
they moving to
mutual
Wyoming though?
friends. I don't know if they've moved yet, but yeah, I think that they are moving Cafaro to Wyoming. Last I heard, so and they make incredible products too, man. It's
Yeah.
great, great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with you,
That's what I use as a backpack
oh yeah,
generally.
they're incredible backpacks. It's a whole nother level. So as far as getting information and stitching this all together, do you have a team or is anybody collaborating with you, or is this all you that's putting this together? I mean, I'm sure you have other obligations in life as well, not just this.
Yeah, so as far as the only other person that's officially in the company is John Stallone. He lives in Arizona. Him and I have been friends, been hunting together for, I don't know, 7 years now, probably, something like that. Um, he he's been helping me mostly with kind of like the advertising side and partnership side, because of the people that he knows. But the website and the actions and all that, that's been, I'm the only one that's had the time for it, honestly. And it really, like, it was, I had this idea and I'm like, I'm gonna go with this. You can, you can be involved if you want to, but I'm making this happen. you know, you're just gonna have to believe in me. Um, so that's it right now. So I do have a few, and this is rather recent. I do have a few sort of content providers now, and some of those are actually coming in from Free Range American as well.
Oh, awesome.
But yeah, so those people will be helping me with writing actions and writing sort of the strategy side of how our actions are set up. Um, and those are people who are seasoned, smart writers who do research and can do things way better than I can. And it also saves me a lot of time, um, to to have somebody else, provide me this info so I can throw these actions up. Because once I have the content, I still have to basically make the pages, a new web page for it, and just set up the back end correctly and all that good stuff. So
You got
it
social
takes some
media
time,
on
but if
top of that. I mean, there's so many
yeah,
things out there now.
so fairly small at this point for sure. I've been doing nothing but this.
It makes me like it even more. So you've done quite a few of these podcasts now. I feel honored to have you on. I don't know anything about you though. This is the first time we've hung out. I mean, can we dive into your background a little bit? And you had mentioned, growing up in the outdoors and having some property to play on and, shooting a bow early on. But can you just kind of run us through your background and maybe what your parents did, if they were hunters or, what they did for work, that sort of thing? And
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Michigan. I lived there for 20 some odd years, 22 years probably, I would say. And it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere for, I think most people would say it was in the middle of nowhere. But I could come home from school and either hunt on our property or hunt on the, you know, tons and tons of land that surrounded us. And then we also had 7,000 acres of public land that was about a mile away. That that was great for. I mostly deer hunted there, on that property there. My dad has been a hunter since he started hunting in the 50s. He started bow hunting actually. Um, I have his Fred Bear bow. I'm looking at it
really,
right now. Yeah, I killed a turkey with it last year, so I have his first bow. It's a
he must have been a Fred Bear fan.
yeah. Well, I think that's about all that was around back then. But it's his old recurve. It's a Bear Super Magnum 48, I believe, and I got that restrung up last year and
Nice.
killed a turkey and a pig. I got a wild pig with that too last year. So yeah, he was definitely way into hunting, mostly deer. He was absolutely in love with hunting white-tailed deer, and so he had all over Michigan and Ohio and West Virginia, and that's basically where he hunted deer there. So we ate, um, man, pretty much nothing but wild game. We had sort of a small farm, chickens, and we had pheasants for a while. Lots of gardens and fruit trees. I looked forward to, like, hunting was such, it was the biggest event, and it was more than one event, but I looked forward to being the age where I could go big game hunt, like with my dad and all the guys that they'd go way up in northern Michigan or go to the Upper Peninsula. Like that was
Yeah.
like the biggest event in my life when I was finally 12 and I could actually go. bow hunt. That was the biggest event in the world for me, right? So I mean, I never played sports in the fall. I never played sports in the fall because that was hunting season. Um, that's how important it was for me. And I honestly thought I believe I thought at the time that I didn't know people didn't hunt. I thought everybody hunted to some extent, and I certainly thought everybody supported it. I mean, it was just, I mean, it was nothing to see. We'd come back from hunting and people had deer on top of their cars and trucks and campers just stacked, and nobody thought anything of it. I don't, it's probably
Yeah.
different now. Um, but I mean, I just had, my one of my first memories is watching my brother chop a chicken's head off in our backyard, and I saw that chicken running around with no head. It didn't bother me. It was just that's one of my first memories I've ever had, and I just knew where the food came from, and I don't know, it doesn't stand out as strange to me, and it just seemed super supernatural, to me.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes that's kind of hard for me to put myself in anybody else's perspective because I've just been, born into it, and I just have a different perspective, just like everybody does, you know. Um, so there's a lot of things that don't bother me personally, but I'm aware that it can. I'm aware that there might be some explaining to do, or you might have to be sensitive on some subjects, to others. And I'm fine with that. That's fine. I mean, that's just kind of the way the world works, and most people have more things in common than they don't. Um, that's just a part of humanity, I guess. Um, so then I moved to Chicago, and then I moved to California. After I left Chicago, I didn't hunt for when I lived in California. I didn't hunt for about 5 or 6 years. I didn't hunt at all, and I wasn't buying preference points either, um, which sucks because I'd have a lot more elk
No,
points
I
now.
did the same thing because I lived in California for a stint. Yeah, the bighorn sheep was the one for me. I'm like, I just threw my life away, Like, hopefully I drop before
Uh,
I'm 65 years old so I can actually go.
yeah, just just waiting on getting lucky on that. Yeah. So then, but then I got into wild pig hunting out here. A buddy and I, he was like, "Man, we got to go check out this place and go wild pig hunting." It's on public land, and at that point, I was going back to Michigan and going back to Ohio and hunting whitetail, but I didn't hunt in California at all. It just seemed too complicated to me at the time. Now I hunt here all the time. I love hunting here. Um, so it took me a while to get into that. I had a brief pause from hunting. I was more into like rock climbing and I don't know, different just things that brought me to California specifically. Um, and in 2006, I bought actually a an events based rock climbing company. We basically do like corporate events and stuff like that, and that's still what I do to this day. We do rock climbing and zip lining and fun stuff like that, just for like cities and corporate events and things like that. So that's what I do um, that's how I make my money. That's also why I have a lot of time to do this because it's seasonal. So I have basically all of what you would consider bill season, like legislative season. I usually have that off from my job. Um, so I have a lot of time to invest in this, which
Yeah.
works. Which
No, that's great, man. We grew up very similar. I grew up elk hunting and just running around the woods in Colorado. I mean, we didn't have anything better to do than make, we were making guns out of sticks and using pine cones as hand grenades to play army and that sort of thing, or go rabbit hunting or whatever. And then when big game, rolled around, I was with uncles and stuff, calling in elk. And like, I'll never forget, I remember my first elk hunting trip like it was yesterday, just being there, shaking when bulls are being called in to archery hunt, and then seeing that whole process. And it's cool because those family traditions we've stuck with them. Like I still go with my brother and my uncles. Some of my uncles are on the younger side, big family in Colorado. They help me tremendously because I grew up without a dad. So these were the guys that I looked up to, and they let me tag along for all of it. So I was fully invested and knew what I was getting into before I even actually, put a knock on an elk. And so, yeah, I feel very fortunate and kind of crazy now. Just like I said earlier, the influx that we're seeing. For example, one of those uncles is now in his 50s and, shot a really nice bull. He drives a flatbed truck. He's bringing it off the western slope and driving down I-70, and he's like, wow, this is the first time. He's like, I got flipped off by 3 different people and honked at and swerved at because I had the elk in the back of the truck. He's like, 20 years ago it wouldn't have happened. He's like, I'm gonna leave. And I was like, well, where are you gonna go? He's like, I don't know, Montana or something, and I was like, oh, it's probably not any better there. So it's amazing how times are changing and how fast they are. And he was so disappointed, man. I hate seeing that, but we still get out there, and I'm in hunting in California because I never have. Are there a lot of hunters there? I mean, do you run into other hunters like in Colorado, because we have so many out of state people and stuff? If you're in an open game unit, man, you got to almost use the other hunters to your advantage sometimes.
Yep. It depends on where you are. I've definitely found my spots. There's definitely a lot of hunters for sure. There's a lot of private land. There's quite a bit of public land as well, for sure. Yeah, it just depends on where you want to go. I mean, there's certainly there's one area that I went to when I first started hunting here that I was rifle hunting there. I'll never do that again. It was like the most dangerous thing I've ever been involved in my life. There were so many people there.
Right.
But and that's coming from, it's coming from somebody who's hunted opening day in Michigan, which, there's a lot of hunters there. But it just depends on where you go. There's a lot of places to scout. There's definitely spots where you can get away. You can backpack in. Just depends on, I guess, how hard you want to work. And, I've certainly done my best to get access to private land when I can. So I got into guiding as well. With all that time I had off, I got into guiding, and then I got into outfitting. So I also have my own business where I run hunts as well. So, but for me, that gives me ability to pay for access in California by essentially bringing in funds from guiding, and then I can hunt that property. So, and I've kind of expanded guiding. I do a little bit in South Dakota and Arizona, Idaho. Well, I'm not guiding there. I hunt there in those states as well. I do guide in South Dakota, but I hunt in Idaho and I hunt in Arizona and expanding into other states as well. Just depends on how I'm using my points and all that good stuff. I love hunting elk in Idaho.
It's hard for me to leave the state of Colorado. I just don't much. I mean, it's September. That's where I'm at. You can find me there. So, listen, man, Charles, this has been really awesome. Let's go ahead and wrap this up for the night. I want to do one with you in person, man. It's, we have this internet lag going on and stuff a little bit, and it's difficult, but I'd love to have you in the studio and come up and see where I'm at. And, I know the fall's kind of a hard time for us because we're hunting or something, but if you come up before September, right before September or after September, we got some huge bulls running around where I'm at that, 300-400 class bulls that roll into the golf course there. And they don't leave until hunting season's over. But hey, listen, this has been awesome. Like, I want to go ahead and close this out the right way with you. And I think that what you're doing is great. I can't wait to have you on. I want to have you on more often so we can talk about some issues. I want to be a platform for you as well, so you don't have to come on the podcast. If you want to shoot me anything or any issues that I can share, you know, I think it's good for our listener base. We have a lot of hunters that listen to this and follow us and stuff like that. And we got a lot of people that aren't hunters either, but looking at us for some education a little bit, you know. So I want to commend you on all that, man. I think it's awesome what you're doing. Keep it up.
Awesome.
Let us know how we can help. And I think that nobody cares more about wildlife than hunters, and you've given them an easy way to have a voice, you know, and it's time to take some action. So I encourage people to go check out Howl for Wildlife. Before we jump off, you know, I know you guys have social media, you got website, and more importantly, let's talk about how people can help on the individual basis, whether it's a donation or donating their time or whatever.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's the website's howlforwildlife.org. Instagram is kind of where everything originates as far as social media, and then it gets spread out to Facebook or Twitter from there. But that's howl_org. And yeah, we are 100% based on donations. So those are very much appreciated to keep all this software paid for and content providers and all that good stuff, for sure. That definitely helps.
Well, thanks again for your time, man. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I really appreciate everybody listening, and you know, go check out Howl for Wildlife. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.